Chapter 30, Gold and Silver. 1893 was an awful year. 1894 was worse. Some 1,400 strikes were called in 1894. Workers were protesting low wages and poor working conditions. Many of them lost their jobs when they went on strike. You know they had to be hurting to risk that. Jacob Coxey was a farmer, a quarry owner, a devout Christian, and a dedicated reformer. His great-grandfather fought in the American Revolution. He thought the government should help its out-of-work citizens find jobs. So, in 1894, when things had gotten really bad, he marched an army of unemployed men from Massillon, Ohio to Washington, D.C. President Cleveland refused to see them. Crowds cheered the marching men. The police arrested Coxey. President Cleveland didn't believe it was his job to do anything about the unemployed. Most leaders agreed with him. Employment and working conditions were thought to be the responsibility of business. That summer, the highly profitable Pullman Company cut workers' wages for the 5th time. Pullman made railroad sleeping cars in a town near Chicago. When the company cut wages, it didn't cut the fees it charged workers for rent, heat, and lights, or to use the company church. The workers were angry. They went on strike. Soon the strike spread to 50,000 workers throughout the railroad industry. The governor of Illinois said he could handle the situation, but Cleveland's attorney general didn't agree. The attorney general had been a railroad lawyer. He insisted the government take action against the workers and the union. Federal troops were sent to Illinois, which led to violence, deaths, and arrests. Businesses and banks were failing everywhere, and there was a run on gold as people tried to make sure their money was in the safest currency, gold. The government's gold reserves were disappearing. President Cleveland blamed the country's money problems on an act of Congress, the Silver Purchase Act of 1890, which said that the government had to buy so many $1 million worth of silver every year. Cleveland led the nation back to a strict gold standard. The Silver Purchase Act was repealed. The president became known as a gold bug. But it didn't help a bit. The gold reserves kept going down, and down, and down. That led to a crisis. The nation was in danger of going bankrupt. Finally, in desperation, President Cleveland went to the country's leading financier, J.P. Morgan, and asked for his help. Morgan, with other bankers, gave the government gold in return for U.S. government bonds, which they soon sold at a profit. That helped stabilize the currency. But many Americans thought it was humiliating for the President of the United States to have to go to a private banker for help. The financiers seemed to have more power than the U.S. government. Prosperity would soon return. Within a few years, there were jobs and confidence in abundance. The experts would not agree on what had brought on the Depression or what brought recovery. The discovery of gold in South Africa, Canada, and Alaska helped. It put more money in circulation worldwide. But in 1894 and 1895, everyone in the nation was concerned about money. No one knew that the hard times would soon disappear. People argued a lot about what was needed to bring back prosperity. Farmers and silver miners associated the bimetal policy with good times. If the treasury were full of silver, it could print more money and mint more coins. More money in circulation, they believed, would bring happy days. Others, who called themselves sound money people, thought silver the road to financial disaster. Gold in Alaska. Back in 1867, Secretary of State William Seward brought a big piece of land for the United States. Some people thought it was worthless and overpriced. They called it a large lump of ice. Seward spent $7.2 million, or about 2 cents an acre, to buy Alaska from Russia. Some Americans wanted Russia to keep it. They called the deal Seward's Folly. It turned out to be one of the world's great real estate deals, like the Louisiana Purchase. In 1896, when gold was discovered in the Klondike in northwestern Canada, not far from Alaska, people decided that Seward was smart after all. It was the richest gold strike ever. It would change the history of Western Canada, Alaska, and the whole Pacific Northwest. As news of the gold spread, a whole lot of people headed for northern Canada and Alaska. Alaska, which became the 49th state in 1959, is huge. Put a tracing of Alaska on top of the lower 48 and you may be astonished at the size of our largest state. It has a coastline longer than all of the lower states combined. Juneau, on the coast off British Columbia, is its capital. In 1942, U.S. Army engineers hacked a 1,388-mile road through wilderness. That Alaska highway has, for better and worse, brought trucks, oil rigs, and new people into a land of totem poles, caribou, and native cultures. A stockpile of gold or silver in the treasury isn't the only thing that determines a country's wealth. In its industry, resources, and people have much more to do with it. But you wouldn't have thought that back in 1895. Gold and silver divided the nation. It was silver farmers against gold bug industrialists and industrial workers. The fight got hot, very hot. Then into the fray marched a silver-tongued orator. He was young, handsome, and sincere. He wanted to be president. Making a mint. A mint is a place where you make coins. Today, the coins you use are made at the U.S. Mint in Denver and Philadelphia. The U.S. Bureau of the Mint has gold warehouses, they're called depositories, at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and at West Point, New York. Some commemorative coins are minted at West Point and at a mint and museum in San Francisco. Gold and silver coins, called bullion, are minted at West Point. Paper currency is made by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing in Washington, D.C.